Hello.
And welcome.
It's the Graveyard Girls, a true crime and mysteries podcast.
And I've got another meaty one for us today. There's no pun intended, it's another big case. But I am going to fit it into one episode.
Good, because I'm very hungry.
Yeah, we are very hungry today.
Speaking
recording.
of meat. Even though I'm
Sorry,
vegetarian.
I've set you off. Yeah, I was going to say. Do you want a meaty one, Natasha?
I'm just thinking of food.
You might need a meaty one after this. No, we've done a lot of recording today.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we record quite a little bit in advance. But yeah, we've just finished recording another mammoth case. And we are still struggling with interference issues. So, yeah, it took us a little while to do that first one. But we need to get this done because we have a lot of stuff to record. Now, in terms of you, the witch trials is already well underway now. But at the time that we're recording this, we still have the witch trials to record. We're a little bit behind. We have everything written up. We just need to record.
Yes.
But our interference issues have poo-pooed that a little bit and put
It's very
behind. Yes.
Frustrating.
Is the polite way of putting it. So, yes. On that note, I shall crack on with this. So me and Natasha can go and get some lunch because we're both very hungry and have grumbly tummies. So today I have a good old-fashioned murder mystery for you.
Ooh.
I haven't done a murder mystery for a little while.
No, you haven't.
So this is the Peasenhall mystery and the murder of Rose Harsent in 1902.
Okay.
Now, I'd normally give you some background first, but the way I want to do it today is I want to set up the murder scene first. So
Okay.
that's where I'm going to start. So it's the 1st of June. A man named William Harsent walks up through the gate of Providence House. This is a large old house situated in Peasenhall, Suffolk. William was on his way to the house with linen for his daughter Rose. Rose was a live-in domestic servant to the local Baptist William Crisp and his wife Georgiana. Crisp.
Oh.
Like the food.
Oh.
Like the snack. Rose lived in a room above the kitchen which had its own door to the rear of the house, so separate entrance. Now it's Monday morning, so Rose's day should have already begun. William, however, Rose's dad, he was used to popping over and having tea in the morning. So I guess she did a few jobs, then he pops over for tea, yes. But something was different this time.
No.
The house was quiet, the kitchen window had been covered over, shutting out the light. This was not something Rose would normally have done, so William wondered if Rose had simply overslept. But when he tries the door, he finds that it's unlocked.
No.
William goes in to find Rose laying on her back on the kitchen floor. It was clear she was dead straight away. Her throat had been cut, and unusually, her nightdress had been burnt away. The floor which Rose herself was lying on was covered in blood. Now, I did find this a little bit unusual, but some say that in the shock of horror of what William found and what he saw, he throws the kitchen rug over her and leaves the house. So some were saying he was so distraught by the sight that he just threw something over her. But also he's disrupted some of the evidence.
Naked.
It's sort of, she's burnt. I'll get into it a bit more.
So yeah, her dad finding her like that is not easy. So yeah, I assume he's just covering her because it's his daughter who's clearly brutally been murdered.
But it does kind of tamper with evidence.
I know, but
I get it.
You don't think of that at the time, do you?
No, probably not. Not unless you've been in this situation before. So he then went to find neighbours. The neighbours found Constable Eli Nunn. Now, a bit more about the house that Rose lived in. She lived in a self-contained part of the house, accessible by a staircase that ran from the kitchen, which had been built onto the back of the house, the main house, along with a small conservatory. The stairs then ran up the house's top floor, and a short corridor then ran into her room. The kitchen measured 10 foot by 8 foot, and there's an internal door that led to other parts of the main house and a back door leading to the outside. So she can either get back into the main house, which is the route she would have taken when she did her work in the main house, or she could equally have left from the rear of the property if she wanted to go on her own way without disturbing anyone in the main house, which I feel like is something she probably would have done, especially if they had guests.
Yeah.
She's obviously not going to trawl through a house that isn't hers.
No.
Even as a servant, especially if she's dressed, I don't know, in her own time to go and do her own thing. She's not just going to casually stroll around the house. So This meant that when the internal door was shut, which Rose did at night time, Rose could then entertain visitors unobserved by the house's occupants. So say she wanted a man friend round, she could do that without anyone in the main house. Well, she wouldn't have to bring them through the main house, basically.
Or a lady friend.
Yeah, or a lady friend. She can have a lady friend. Now, according to PC Nunn, when he found the body that morning, Rose was laying on the floor with her head resting on the bottom of the staircase. Her throat had been cut from ear to ear. Blood spatter extended all the way up the stairs and around her feet. A newspaper rested beneath her head was dated the 30th of May 1902. So it's a 30 or 31 days in June. May, sorry. Is it 31?
31.
31. So that's from 2 days before. Now, to one side of her body lay a candlestick and a burnt out candle. To the other side was a kitchen lamp which had been taken to pieces. Not far from the body lay a broken medicine bottle, its cork stopper still wedged firmly into the bottle neck, so it's the bottom half of the bottle that's been broken. A wall shelf near the rear outside door had been pulled down. It appeared Rose had been set alight after she had died, so I'm wondering if candle had gone over and then scorched and burnt her that way. The newspaper was charred and the whole front of her nightdress was burnt away, leaving only material around the neck. But that may not have burnt because it was blood soaked, so it was wet.
Okay.
She also had extensive burns to her arms and torso, though her face and hair were virtually untouched. Strangely, she was still wearing her stockings, which wouldn't match with the nightdress. They should have come off with. So it's like she was part getting ready for bed, part not, maybe. Depends how you want to look at it. The table
because you wouldn't wear stocking. But surely you'd take them off before you put your nightdress on. Maybe. I don't know.
Was she interrupted midway, maybe? Like someone knocked on the door?
Maybe.
Possibility.
Okay.
So the tablecloth covering the kitchen table was also singed. Blood had pooled around her body. A woman's shawl, which was presumed to have been Rose's, has been fastened up over the kitchen window. There was also a smell of paraffin in the room.
Okay.
Now, once the kitchen had been looked at, PC Nunn then went up to Rose's bedroom, which was up the stairs. There he found 3 letters, a copy of some obscene verses, and a bed that had not been slept in. Now, when it says obscene verses, I think it means a bit raunchy.
Okay.
From what I can make out.
Oh, is she reading a Mills and Boons type style book?
Possibly. But these letters, so already we're throwing in possible lover. Okay. I'm going to go with.
Okay.
Now, one of the letters had arranged an appointment for the previous night, so to meet a man, and here's a bit of the letter. Dear R, I will try to see you tonight at 12 o'clock at your place. If you put a light in your window at 10 for about 10 minutes, then you can put it out again. Do not have a light in your room at 12, as I will come round the back way. So that's what someone has written to her. So R, dear R, meaning Rose. Yeah.
It's also very specific. It's like for 10 minutes only. Nothing more than 10 minutes. Yeah. Well, she doesn't do that. Is he not coming?
It's like a really slow Morse code.
Yeah.
It's like, like continue for 10 minutes. Okay, that's the signal.
Yeah, like, why?
I don't know.
And then have it be gone by 12.
Yeah.
So,
I don't know, is he kind of walking in and, pitch black darkness? Also, the candle's not going to light up that high. How big is a candle?
I don't get it.
It was a bit strange, but obviously it's worth noting it was there. The letter was unsigned and was clearly of importance to the police, as now was it possibly a meeting that went wrong or a meeting of murder? So was it premeditated murder, or was it just a meeting that escalated and went wrong and resulted in a murder? Or was it not related at all? But it's obviously of importance. So, I thought you were going to say something.
No, it's just the weird candle thing for 10 minutes. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Now, I understand just before, light the candle if you want me to come. Yeah. Don't light the candle if you don't want me to come.
Yeah, and maybe leave there for a minute or two just so I definitely know it's you that's put it in the window.
Yeah, but leave it there for 10 minutes only.
It's strange. It's a very strange time, isn't it?
Yeah, what if you miss it?
Well, maybe that's why he wanted 10 minutes. I don't know. Could take him 10 minutes to get there, I don't know. Now, Dr. Charles Lee was called and he arrived at Providence House at 8:40 a.m. He confirmed she was dead, which I think was already pretty obvious, but he's confirmed it anyway. But most importantly, he examined the medicine bottle and discovered the label still partly attached. It was a label he recognised as his own, so he dished it out.
Oh no.
And had the name of its intended recipients, the children of Mrs. Gardner, she being a neighbour. Not the neighbour they previously contacted, another neighbour. So already, why is there a broken medicine bottle belonging to Mrs. Gardner in Rose's house? I will get on to this. Now...
Is this a true story?
Yes.
Because you got roses, you got crisps, you got Gardner. It's just weird.
So, according to his later report, the bottle also had a smell of paraffin. Now, note that it was later on also noted at the time the smell in the room.
The medicine?
Yes. But maybe it's not medicine in the bottle. That's where I'm going with this.
But he administered it to children.
The original prescription.
Okay.
So, the police began an investigation based solely on Dr. Lee's supposition that the bottle contents had caused the fire and the belief that someone in the Gardner household was responsible. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the Gardners. Now, they lived 200 yards away. The mummy and daddy Gardner married in 1888 and were now a family of 8. So they had 6 babies. They lived in Peasenhall for 12 years and were well regarded by those who knew them. So everyone quite likes them in the community from what I can make out. Now, William Gardner, so Daddy Gardner, was the police's first and main suspect. They believed he'd written the letter and committed the murder. So they're believing him to be her lover.
Okay. Now, the candle thing makes a bit more sense then.
Yeah, so he's waiting
nearby.
for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Now William says, at this point, was said to be a devout, respectable member of the nearby Sibston congregation. Can't get my words out. It's worth noting that Rose was also a member of the same congregation. So this, not only were the neighbours, but they could have met on, I suppose, on a Sunday, if you like. Though by the 3rd of June, after local inquiries had been made, some suggested that William had a promiscuous side. His clothing and only pocket knife was seized for forensic examination, and William was arrested.
I thought you was going to say he dresses promiscuously.
Oh, what, in a dress?
Yeah. I was just like, where are you going with his clothing? Okay.
But yes. Now, everything the police had was purely circumstantial. 2 men, George Wright and Alphonse Skinner, were the ones who brought about the local scandal of William and Rose having an affair. The pair claimed that they'd overheard Rose and William whilst they stood outside what was known as Peasenhall Doctor's Chapel. Exactly what was heard has never really been clarified, but the pair claimed that what they heard was of a sexual nature.
Okay.
Now, further inquiries were said to produce evidence that Gardner was in the habit of writing to her. So, he wrote a letter to her, doesn't mean he murdered her in my eyes. But, okay, it's another piece of evidence that goes against him, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
At least 2 of his letters were found in her bedroom. It also appeared that he'd met with Rose on occasions during the past month. But it was as the result of Dr. Lee's post-mortem that confirmed the police's suspicion and convinced them that they had the right man. So now I'm going to go on to the post-mortem.
Okay.
Dr. Lee carried out a post-mortem the same day as William Gardner had been arrested. He found a deep, jagged cut across her neck, which had severed the trachea and both jugular veins. So that explains why there was so much blood.
Mm-hmm.
There was a stab wound on the left of her chest, a bruise on the right side of her face and jaw, as well as defensive wounds found on both hands. The death was clearly not self-inflicted, so definitely not a suicide.
Oh, I could have told you that.
Yep. But we've got to just be certain. The charring of the body was significant but superficial and definitely happened after death.
Okay.
There was no blistering, which would have occurred had she still been alive when set alight. Most importantly was the fact that she was 6 months pregnant.
Oh.
Possible motive here. Might need to get rid of her. This is what the police felt was Gardner's motive for murder. So, he's obviously, her having his baby would highlight the affair, therefore he needs to bump her off. That's, I'm presuming, what they're going with.
So, murder is the way.
Yes.
It is not.
It's not. But according to the police, it is. So Dr. Lees stated that when he first viewed the body at the scene, rigor mortis had set in the upper body. For him, that placed the time of death around 4 a.m. After the post-mortem, he widened that time frame, making it 4 to 6 hours earlier, which could have pushed the time of death back to around 2 a.m. Now, although his post-mortem provided a clear motive to the police, it muddied the water concerning their suspect. Everything the police had surmised up to this point was based on the midnight meeting. If this time of the death was correct, why would the killer wait at least 2 hours to kill Rose? Could it have been that he talked to her for a while and then things turned sour? Or did Dr. Lees altering his time of death to make it as close to midnight as he could to help the police with their current suspect and matching their story?
Okay.
So could it have been his original 4 a.m, which was better, which is obviously 4 hours later? But did he try and push the window a couple of hours previous to that, so 2 a.m, saying that they maybe had a bit of a chat, a drink, then it turns out that would be much more plausible than the 4 hours. 4 hours is a long time. You think in that time, in those circumstances, people were getting up at 4 or 5 to start work. So if you're having a bit of a naughty rendezvous, you're probably going to do it quickly and try and get back before your wife gets up early in the morning to make the breakfast.
Yeah.
So 4 a.m. seems a little bit far-fetched.
Okay.
So this now goes back to Gardner's wife. She claimed that she was aware of the accusations but didn't believe them to be true. Now, apparently, there's been a previous inquiry into the affair made by Reverend John Guy, which eventually exonerated William. So this was prior to the murder. Okay. The couple had discussed it, and Rose continued to visit their cottage despite the local gossip. So Mrs. Gardner obviously wasn't bothered about it if it was true. They'd known each other for 7 years as far as Miss Gardner was concerned, and she claims that an affair was nonsense. So I think she's basically saying that they were good friends. They were close, but more like a family friend than anything naughty going on. And obviously those suggestions of sex noises or sex acts came from 2 other people which were already part of a community which were quite gossipy. So it's not concrete evidence, is it? Yeah.
It's easy to make up people having affairs just to suit your narrative, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So William Gardner would have had a lot to lose should the accusations have been proven to be true. William was a well-respected employee as a foreman for the company Smith & Sons for the past 4 years. His adherence to religion and ability to provide for his 6 children also gave him respectability at the time. So it's not like he's off just shagging loads of random women and not providing for his family. From what we can make out, he was a family man.
Okay.
So I'm not saying he couldn't have had an affair, but if he's also supposed to be chasing Rose around everywhere, I find it quite hard that he's also such a family man at the same time.
Yeah.
I know it's not impossible, but still. The police believed that Gardner's wife's denial did not prove William innocent, and they pressed on with their investigation into him. So now they needed to determine William's whereabouts at the time. There were witnesses to confirm his movements right up until the early hours of the morning of the 1st of June. So I'm going to go into his alibi now.
Okay.
And it goes back to the afternoon, so lunchtime before, on the 31st of May. He'd been in Leiston and Kelsale, which was 2 to 3 miles from the coast with his daughters. He arrived back home around 9:30 p.m. and the couple... Oh, sorry. I'll go back over that bit. Arrived back home around 9:30 and the couple had a meal together. At around 10 p.m, he was seen standing in the street by his front door from where he could see Rose's bedroom window. William apparently spoke to another neighbour, Harry Burgess. Harry said the pair discussed the coming thunderstorm, which could be seen gathering in the distance. Harry also later confirmed that a light in Rose's window could clearly be seen at 10 o'clock, so she did light that candle according to him. The storm began around 11:30 p.m. The Gardners left their children in bed and paid a visit to the next door neighbour, Rose Dickinson. Not Rose that's been murdered, another Rose. Rose Dickinson managed the local ironmongers. The couple were said to stay until the storm had begun to calm down around 1:30 a.m. They then returned home. According to Mrs. Gardner, William slept through until 8:30. Mrs. Gardner said that she'd been woken up again in the early hours feeling unwell and did not return until the sun had started to rise, which for the time of year was 4 a.m. So she's claiming William's been in bed this whole time. Now, if you want to go back to what the estimated time to death was, that's 2 to 4 a.m. Mrs. Gardner says he was in bed the whole time, so he couldn't have done it.
Okay.
This part of the alibi was corroborated in part by a neighbour on the other side of their house, Amelia Pepper. There's Amelia. She told police that she heard Mrs. Gardner get up around 2:20 a.m. She said the walls between them were so thin and the sound of movement was easily distinguishable. So at that time, I think big house was sort of divided into lots of smaller houses, so it is literally paper thin walls. Now, still none of this changes the police's mind on who the suspect was. Police also spoke to local gamekeeper James Morris, who claimed to have seen a trail of footsteps after the storm between the Providence house and the Gardener's cottage. The police case went to court with William's motive being that he'd discovered that Rose was now pregnant with his child and he needed to get rid of her in order to maintain that he wasn't having an affair. 6 months after William had been arrested and left in prison, he stood on trial at the dock at Suffolk Autumn Assizes in Ipswich before the Honourable Sir William Grantham Knight, also known as Mr. Justice Grantham. William, of course, pled not guilty. Evidence given, autopsy findings were recounted, and a numerous of friends and neighbours testified. So, you remember the obscene letters?
Yes.
The writer of one of those letters was found out to be 20-year-old Frederick Davis, who lived next door to Rose. He admitted his involvement, and in his testimony to court, he claimed that he'd only written them after Rose had told him to do so. But I don't have any idea why she'd ask him to write that sort of letter if he wasn't interested in sending it. So I was a bit like, okay. But is this something to do with the police? I don't know.
You think the police are just trying to figure out and be like, you wrote this, didn't this? Because Rose asked you to. Okay.
Yeah. So, handwriting experts had been brought in to ascertain if William had written the note about the midnight meeting, which was obviously the one of big importance. But that failed to prove anything concrete. Some were certain it was his writing, while others were not 100% sure. William's clothes were examined but failed to produce any forensic links to bloodstaining. The pocket knife was also clean. So at this point, there's no actual concrete forensic evidence linking him, which, with how much blood there was, I would have expected him to have been covered.
Even if you clean anything, there'd be microscopic.
Yeah. So, and even for the time, they would have picked this sort of thing up. So even the type, the texture and colour of the envelopes Rose's letters had come in were looked at. Inquiries into the local post office had found that the buff envelope PC Nunn had found containing the midnight meet letter was delivered to Providence House on the afternoon of the 31st of May. Mrs. Crisp, the owner of Providence House, told the police that she'd seen the letter herself. This corroborated the constable's belief that the envelope and the letter belonged together. This then throws up, did Gardner have access to said buff envelopes, either at home or at work? Testimony from witnesses said not. So I think it wouldn't be your cheapest, like, second class. Also, why would he send it to the post office?
Exactly. That's what
why did he not hand it in himself?
That's what I was thinking.
It seems a bit far-fetched. The only way he could send it from the post office was if he was maybe sending it from work, but it seems someone could catch him doing that.
But if you're literally over the road, just post it in the middle of the night.
Through the letterbox,
Yeah.
And you supposedly see her in passing because you're friends, so why not just hand it to her? Now, besides the alleged fare and medicine bottle, there wasn't much evidence to go against the Gardners. Mrs. Gardner said that Rose had ended up with the medicine bottle after she'd finished with it for treating the children with a cold. Mrs. Gardner said it had contained camphorated oil. Ernest Wilde, a barrister for the defence, put forward that it was Rose herself that then used the bottle to store paraffin, which she would then use to pour over the fire coals each morning to help light the kitchen fire. So basically, she probably needed a small container for the paraffin, which she maybe got from a bigger container back at the house. Mrs. Gardner had obviously finished treating the children for whatever. Rose probably cleaned it out. Mrs. Gardner said, "Oh, it's fine, you can use this." She's used that to contain her own little bit in her own storage. It's in a medicine bottle. Kind of makes sense. I kind of get it.
Yeah.
I don't think it's impossible, and it explains your previous thing about the medicine bottle smelling of paraffin. Although there is a lot of medicines that are flammable. Just saying. After the jurors debated, only one found William not guilty. At the time, law demanded that they all be of the same verdict, and so with the jury not agreeing, the judge dismissed them and ordered a retrial. William was returned to prison until his second murder trial. So the second trial began on the 24th of January 1903. This was less public hostility toward Gardner. In the opinion of his guilt had changed. Funds had even been raised to cover his legal costs. So people are sort of getting on his side and feeling a bit sorry for him. The notion that Rose led a blameless life was now brought into question as doubt was cast and expressed over the Gardner's involvement. Prosecutor Henry Dickens, who is son of the author Charles Dickens, took his seat in the courthouse in Ipswich. He needed new evidence in order to prosecute, but there wasn't any. So
that makes sense.
Yes. And this is where it gets interesting, because now there's a letter of confession appears. Yes. So there were 3 letters of confession in which one was read out, but none was significant enough to warrant close inspection, and so didn't help the defence.
Okay.
So the judge expressed strong dissent but allowed the letter. It had been addressed to the East Anglian Times. The letter was a long, rambling statement. So this is how the letter sort of goes. And I found this. It was then obviously reported in the paper. The letter was a long, rambling statement. This is the gist of the letter. I've not included the whole letter, just the important bits. From my darling Roseanne Harson's devoted true lover, but she deceived me, both with Gardner and Davis. Now, this person is suggesting that that's who she's having an affair with. Davis was the father of a child, who is someone different to Gardner. As my own darling Rose told me the night before I committed this horrible murder, I must confess as G, as not the murderer of my darling... I must confess as G, referring to Gardner, is not the murderer of my darling Rose. There is 2 of us who was there. Ooh. B was watching whilst I did it. The writer of the letter then goes on to claim that he lay with Rose on the kitchen floor before murdering her, which is a bit strange. So they're having sex in the kitchen, on the kitchen floor.
And being watched? That's what I...
Yeah, because if there's 2 of them, what's the other guy doing? Is he peering through the window? I don't know. He claimed that he'd put the paraffin in the bottle. And he ends it with, I could not think of her having a baby with that Davis. The reason for the first letter was thrown out because it was made reference to a sofa, but there wasn't one in Rose's house, in the bigger context of the letter.
Okay.
So it got a bit complex and strange, but basically there were several letters, and the reason that one was ultimately, even though it was the most plausible one, it was ultimately thrown out because it made reference to a sofa and there wasn't one in her house. Now, police apparently made every effort to find the writer, but no links could be made. The only person who matched the description of the persons writing the letters was a man by the name of Goodchild, who was in the neighbourhood of Peason Hall on the night of the murder, but police couldn't find anything to connect him to the murder. The other 2 letters were addressed to police, one from Devonshire and another from London, but no importance was attached to them, so they just felt like it was a bit of a hoax.
Okay.
Now, after 4 days, as had previously happened, the jury was unable to reach a decision. Another trial was ordered by the judge with a date set for a possible June hearing and a change of venue to the Old Bailey in London. Ernest Wilde argued for his client, saying there was no point in setting a 3rd trial. The Crown eventually agreed. 3 days later, Gardner was released. The Gardners would now move to South London to start again, so the whole family up and do stakes. But what I wanted to do was, could the Gardner have done it? Before I look at any other suspects, I wanted to think, despite the fact that they didn't have any evidence, could he have done it? I need to disprove it for myself, if you like. So, some say that Dr. Lee's time of death is incorrect. Rigor mortis had only set up in the upper part of the body, and the trial suggests that the death could have occurred 6 to 7 hours ago, putting the time of death at 1:30 a.m. at the earliest.
Also, she's set on fire after she's dead. Wouldn't that impact her
I'm not
body?
sure. I hadn't thought about that.
Because don't you kind of go rigid when you're burnt?
I don't know.
Okay.
Crumple up sort of thing.
Because you always
shrivel.
see them
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. I hadn't thought of that.
And stuff.
I don't know if maybe that takes a whole on the body if the whole body sets alight rather than just a portion of it. I'm not sure.
Okay.
It's a very good point though. I hadn't thought about that. So obviously, if you do that, that would then put his death at the earliest point of 1:38 a.m. But William had an alibi for 1:30, if you remember, because he'd been to see the other lady. They left at 1:30, so he couldn't be in the thingy murdering her already if he was with someone else. And it wasn't just him; it was the neighbour and his wife. So that's two people that have corroborated, not just his wife.
Yeah, because you could argue the fact that her sleeping next to him doesn't mean he was there all night.
Yeah,
he could have easily
snuck out. Plus, but also then if you want to go and look at the letter, why would he write a letter arranging the murder time and then not take it back? You know, when he's gone into murder, why didn't you go to look for the letter to take it back?
Yeah.
Because it does make sense that someone would send the letter to arrange a time. If you want to go premeditated, you now know what time you're murdering her because you've set up the date. There's it's not a chance meeting anymore. You've actually confirmed it.
But then you still take the evidence back, don't you?
Yeah, because it could come back to you. So, for me, already when you add those few bits together, it's a bit shaky for me. It's not impossible that William could have done it, but also I think he has a pretty good alibi as far as I'm concerned. He's seen too many people, I think, for it to have been him.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't William, who was it? Now, I'm not convinced it is, but I think another strong suspect could be Gardner's wife. Now, if you remember, she gets up at 2:30. He didn't get up till 8. If you want to say it was the original time of death of 4 a.m, there's nothing to say. Obviously, the neighbour just heard her walking about. There's nothing to say she didn't get up, go downstairs, go across the road, murder Rose and come back. The only issue with that is, where's her bloodstain clothes? But is it a case of no one was ever looking at hers, therefore they didn't discover them?
Okay.
So she is a suspect. Plus, by her defending her husband, do you know what I mean? It's like, no, it's definitely not him. She doesn't want him to get in trouble. She knows he didn't do it because she fucking did it. And then if
the affair rumours are absolute BS because it's taken away the suspicion on her because she doesn't believe it.
Yeah. But in fact, she does believe it to be true and therefore that was her motive.
Yes.
So a possible one, I do get it, but again, okay, I'd like to see a bit more evidence, but is that a case of they just didn't go looking for any, so that's why no one was discovered? You then want to throw out, especially if you're looking at the confession letter that was allowed in court, is there another lover that we do not know?
Crisp.
Yeah. Or for anyone in the community, I think is a very strong possibility. But also, the one thing I was then thinking, if you go back to Harry Burgess, who gave William the alibi, said he was stood on his front door and they were looking at the storm clouds, why was Harry Burgess out on the street at that hour?
Isn't B mentioned in the letter?
Oh. No, it was R, dear R.
No, they are, but in the confession letter, 2 people were there, me and B.
Oh, it is. And yeah, like Harry Burgess, because obviously I was thinking, was it more he was the one looking out for the candle? Is that why he was on the doorstep?
And he's just like,
because he's the one that confirmed. Yeah, but he was the one that confirmed that he saw the candle in her window.
Oh, okay.
Do you see what I mean? So now he's a bit of a suspect.
He's just like, I'm looking at the storm. Oh, Rose has a candle in her window.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty interesting, isn't it, William? But yes. So he's now done that. And then the other one I wanted to look at was the actual Crisp family themselves. Obviously, I know they're very well to do. But could they have been having some sort of dispute with her that we don't know about? And they weren't even considered, because if you want to throw the whole higher status thing, people aren't even thinking of looking at the family in the house.
No.
It's easy to bump off one of their own workers. They have access to her house from the inside.
But would you leave her in your house?
Yeah, but it's perfect. It looks like, because even though she's in, she's also separate. They could say, well, someone came through from a separate entrance. We didn't hear anyone break into our house because they have separate access. And you think it was the outside door that was unlocked, but that could have been done by them in the dark of the night. They could have unlocked the outer door, one of them gone out and unlocked it. Someone attacked from the inside, still locked the inside one, and then been like, well, we never heard any intruder in our house. They didn't come in through our house. They must have come in from the exit. Therefore, it must have been someone else, because why would we be in the garden in the middle of the night? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
They also have knowledge of all the access. I don't know what their motive would be. The only thing I could think of, there'd be some sort of dispute maybe between them. Or again, could one of them be having the affair?
Yeah. I don't know.
That one does seem a bit far-fetched, but you can't rule them out. They're literally part of the house. They could easily have access to her.
It's true.
So I just thought it was interesting. We're obviously not going to solve it, but I feel like there's quite a few possible sort of suspects. But now you've mentioned that thing about Harry, I hadn't considered that.
B, yes.
Could be Harry.
Because I was just like, who's B? I was like trying to remember who the people you said, and then when you was on about Burgess, I was like, oh yeah, him.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that.
Thank you.
But yeah, so this other person was supposed to be, Davis. So I don't know who Davis was. He was obviously another man within the community that was supposed to be having an affair with her, and he supposedly got her pregnant. Obviously, Gardner was put up as the suspect and also possible person having an affair.
I don't like that it was her dad who found her.
No, neither do I. That was a bit sad.
Yeah.
It could have been anyone else but him, really. Not that it makes any better. She's still been murdered.
Also, okay, I get her dad going round to have breakfast and stuff. Why? I'm assuming she gets the Crisp family their breakfast ready first.
Yeah.
Why aren't they?
Yeah, why have they not been alerted? I did think about that, but unless she goes in there so many hours, say she gets there for 6 o'clock, because the police got there by 8:40 a.m. So it's still quite early. Maybe the Crisp family don't have breakfast until maybe say 9 a.m, but she'd normally get there at 6, make the breakfast, go back, maybe stop, get everything ready, go back quickly, have tea with her dad while she's doing a few bits, and then goes back into the house.
Maybe, yeah.
But yeah, so then maybe she would go to and from the house in between seeing dad. It's not like she's got to travel somewhere, that it's attached to the back of the house. And I feel like the entrance on the back, the dad could maybe go there while she's working.
Yeah.
Because you think her bit of the kitchen is attached to the kitchen to the main house. So it's not, she's literally in the next room. So she could still be making breakfast while her dad comes round. He sort of enters the back of the house, has tea while she's making the Gardener's family breakfast, and then he scuttles off when she goes out to deliver them the breakfast.
I don't think they would murder her because her dad's allowed in. You see what I mean?
Yeah, but then if they did it in the middle of the night, he wouldn't be going there in the middle of the night.
No, I mean, like, she's not treated like a slave. She can have family, she can have friends.
Yeah,
she's allowed out.
okay.
She's got freedom, basically.
Yeah, which for the time was quite unheard of, I think.
So I don't think it's the Crisp family.
No, I don't, but they are... You've got to throw them in.
Of course.
It's not impossible, is it?
Yeah.
And they're perfectly placed. So, as we don't have any credible suspect, I feel like it was another case of they went down one track with it, and William was clearly the only person they ever bothered to look into.
So the real killer got away.
Yeah. I definitely don't think it was William. It's not impossible. He could have still... There's not enough to prove he didn't do it, but I also feel... I don't think there's enough to prove that he did either. I don't think it was him.
Seems overkill as well.
It seems to be a crime of passion, so it just seemed to me that it was a lover of some type, or someone that knew her personally.
Or it could be a lover of her lover.
Oh. Which again would tie in Gardner's wife if that affair was real.
Yeah. Because it's like you're trying to burn the baby away.
But the burning occurred after death.
Yeah. But that's what I mean, it's overkill. You slash her throat.
But I don't think they burned her in my head. I imagine it that the candle was nearby, maybe like...
Oh, okay.
Sort of fell over a bit afterwards, and the fire occurred after
I thought
the murderer left.
I thought they put her on fire on purpose.
No, because I think a lot more of her body would have burnt. To me, it seems like the candle was nearby, and maybe, you know, as it's melted, it's caught something nearby.
Okay.
That's how I imagine it.
Okay.
But yeah, I thought it was not a good juicy murder case like that. We're clearly never going to be able to solve it, but I quite like the older murder ones.
Yeah, I've noticed that theme.
I mean, it's like,
good though.
It's from the same book that I got the Florence one, my very first case from. It's written by the same author. It's really good, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
He obviously has got a knack for uncovering juicy... Is it Victorian murders? It is Victorian, isn't it? 1902?
Yes.
Yeah.
Victorian.
I do know something.
I was just like, did you?
Yeah, so Victorian era.
Yep.
Okay. That's fine.
Just. And then it was Edward the 7th?
I'm not sure how many...
6, 7.
And was it George V? I'm sure it's George V. Or was he 6th? I'm sure he was 5th.
George 5th.
Ah, okay. I have retained some information over the years. Just a little bit. I only know about all the earlier Georges because I was watching a documentary on one before.
Oh. No, we're good.
Okay. Your tummy's just grumbled. But yes. I don't know. I think we're done. I don't think we can put any more suspects out there. I do like your Harry one though. I hadn't considered that.
I just thought of it on the spot. I was just like, B. was like, who's B?
Yeah, I hadn't considered
Burgess.
that. I might have to maybe go and do a little look at him now, see if I can find anything.
Did I just solve it?
Maybe. I'll go and have a little nosy at him and then do a little revisited bit. You never know. I mean, we can't prove it now because he's dead. But yeah, maybe have a little nosy with him and either say he could possibly be a suspect or completely disprove your theory. One of the two. I'll come back. I'll do a little revisited thing, maybe a recap at the beginning of an episode and let everyone know.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah. In the meantime,
keep creeping
and we'll keep digging.